Lena was an alien explorer from the Olani people who had been trained since childhood to travel far worlds and learn about their strange and beautiful life forms, and on this bright day, she stepped down onto the surface of Earth for the first time, her ship humming behind her like a great resting bird, while she breathed in the air that felt heavier and richer than any she had known before, and she looked around at the colors that seemed to burst everywhere in green and blue and soft golden light that moved through the trees like living rivers. She had come with a mission and a heart full of questions, because the Orlani believed that to understand a species you had to see not just their machines or their cities, but the little things they treasured, the foods they shared, the habits that made them smile, and the ways they cared for each other. She had been assigned to a human research station on the edge of a quiet coastal town, a place where scientists from different worlds worked together to share knowledge and help each other understand the vast galaxy around them. And this was where she first met Daniel, a tall human male with calm brown eyes and a warm, easy smile, who seemed both curious and amused about her arrival. He welcomed her in the human way with a handshake, which she found odd but pleasant, because it was like a silent agreement that both would be kind to each other. She followed him through the bright corridors of the station, listening to the sounds of human footsteps, the beeping of devices, and the faint hum of the air systems that kept the place cool. Lena's mind was already busy with a list of subjects to study. She had been told that humans were a mammalian species, and that they produced many different biological fluids, some of which were vital to their survival, and some which were simply for comfort or pleasure. She had heard passing mentions in her training logs about something called Nectar, which certain humans seemed to speak about with pride and mystery, and to her surprise the reference appeared to be linked only to human males, which made it even more intriguing. She imagined that this nectar must be a rare and valuable resource, perhaps something that kept their bodies strong in harsh climates or acted as a ritual offering in their bonding traditions. When she asked Daniel about it, she noticed a brief flicker of confusion cross his face, but he answered kindly, saying that if she was interested, he could arrange to show her what she meant by nectar. She felt a rush of excitement at this promise, already picturing herself making detailed notes for the Aulani Science Council, who would surely be impressed that she had uncovered a unique biological secret so early in her mission. Daniel's voice carried an easy rhythm as he led her past the main lab toward the smaller examination rooms, where cross-species demonstrations were usually done. On the way, she noticed human artwork on the walls, some showing great oceans with ships, others showing smiling groups of people holding hands, and she wondered if these images were part of the same deep cultural meaning as their nectar. She thought about how her own people had sacred drinks made from the roots of mountain plants which they shared during important meetings, and she began to suspect that this human nectar might serve a similar role. Her translator device buzzed softly as it tried to cross-check the word nectar in human language databases, and the results were strange. Some entries spoke of sweet liquid taken from flowers by small flying creatures. Others spoke of sweet drinks made by humans themselves, but one curious entry simply said milk, and then gave a long chemical breakdown that made little sense to her, because it seemed too ordinary to be the legendary male nectar she had imagined. Still, she kept her thoughts to herself as Daniel opened the door to the examination room, which smelled faintly of something sweet and clean. Inside there were tables full of equipment shining under bright lights, and a small storage unit at the back which Daniel moved toward while talking about how humans had many ways of producing and consuming liquids for nutrition and enjoyment. She followed closely, recording everything in her datapad, her large Orlani eyes wide with expectation as she thought of the moment she would finally see the substance that had been hinted about in so many strange human conversations. The room felt warmer now, the air heavy with a sense of anticipation. She could feel her heart beating a little faster, and her mind painting images of golden, glowing drops collected in small crystal vessels, guarded carefully by human males, and handed out in Ceremonies of trust. She imagined human families sitting together, passing the nectar around in cups, telling stories, while sipping from it, and laughing perhaps. It even had healing powers, and could help the sick, or give strength to the weak. She wondered if Daniel was one of the keepers of this precious fluid, and whether giving her a sample meant she had already earned some level of human trust without knowing it. Daniel finally turned to her with a smile that made her antenna twitch in curiosity and said that she was about to have her first real experience of human nectar, and in that moment, Lena knew she would remember this day for the rest of her travels, because here on this strange and colorful world, she was about to discover a secret that might change everything she thought she knew about humans. Daniel walked to the back of the examination room and opened the small storage unit, while Lena stayed near the center, her large silver eyes following his every move and her mind racing with questions she wanted to ask, but she did not want to interrupt what she thought might be a ritual process. The light from the ceiling reflected off the polished counters, making the space feel both clinical and strangely sacred. To her, she could hear the gentle hiss of the air system and the quiet sound of his steps as he moved about, which only deepened the sense of anticipation. She noticed that he reached inside and took out a small cylindrical container made of a pale material that felt cold just to look at it. The container had a bright image of a cow printed on the side, and the human word milk written in bold letters. Her translator whispered the meaning into her ear, and she remembered the earlier strange result from the language database, yet her mind refused to accept that this was the male nectar she had heard about. There must be some connection. She thought perhaps this milk was only a base material from which the true nectar was refined. Maybe male humans added something rare to it, or transformed it through some complex process. Daniel placed the container on the table and fetched a clear glass, which he set down carefully as if preparing to teach her something important. He smiled as he twisted off the cap and poured the liquid into the glass. It flowed in a smooth white stream that shimmered under the bright lights, and Lena leaned forward slightly as if trying to detect some hidden glow she had imagined earlier. The smell was mild and creamy and unfamiliar to her alien senses, but it was not unpleasant. Rather, it carried a strange warm comfort that made her think of enclosed, safe spaces. She asked in a soft voice whether all male humans could produce this liquid, and Daniel blinked at her, clearly surprised by the question. Yet he did not laugh. Instead, he asked what she meant, and she explained in careful words that she had read human males were associated with nectar, and she wished to understand the source and significance of it. She spoke about the role such substances played in Orlani society, and how sharing them could seal alliances, or celebrate great victories. Daniel listened with an expression that shifted between curiosity and restrained amusement. Told her that humans did not produce this milk in their own bodies, at least not human males, and that it came instead from a domesticated animal called a cow, which had been part of human life for thousands of years and provided food, clothing, and even tools. She found this fascinating, but it also made her frown slightly, because it meant that her earlier belief about male nectar was wrong, or at least incomplete. Yet Daniel went on to explain that milk held deep cultural meaning for many humans, especially in their early lives, and that every human, whether male or female, had once depended on a similar liquid from their own mothers during the first stages of life. As she listened, she could feel her initial embarrassment begin to turn into a new kind of interest, because if this was not the exclusive male nectar she had imagined, it was still a vital part of human survival and bonding. She thought about how Orlani younglings were fed with nutrient paste until they could eat solid food, and how that paste had no emotional value attached to it. Perhaps this was what made humans so unique. Perhaps their early connection to this milk created a lasting sense of comfort whenever they consumed it. Again, later in life, other crew members began to pass by the doorway, and some slowed to watch the exchange between Daniel and Lena, their expressions suggesting they understood some joke that she did not yet grasp. One of them even raised a small recording device and whispered to another, who covered their mouth to hide a laugh, but no one interrupted Daniel as he handed the glass to her with a small gesture inviting her to try it. She took the glass carefully, feeling the coolness against her long, slender fingers, and raised it toward her mouth. Her mind was filled with the thought that this was more than a drink. It was a bridge into human experience, perhaps even into the heart of their resilience. She tilted the glass and let the liquid flow across her tongue, and in that instant, her senses were overwhelmed by a gentle sweetness and a smooth texture that wrapped around her thoughts like a soft blanket. It was not sharp or bitter or strange as she had feared, but calm and soothing, like a quiet melody in the background of a long journey. She lowered the glass and looked at Daniel, her antenna twitching. In a sign of deep thought for an Orlani, she told him in a quiet voice that she now understood why humans treasured this nectar so much, and that she wished to record every detail of the experience for her people. Daniel only smiled and nodded, though she thought she caught a quick glance toward the doorway, where the onlookers had gathered, their faces glowing with suppressed laughter. Lena made notes on her data pad about the temperature, the scent, the taste, and the immediate feeling of calm it produced in her. She also recorded Daniel's explanation about its origin and cultural value, adding a personal note that the human method of sharing drinks in such a casual and friendly way might be as important to their social bonds as the substance itself. She felt a strange warmth, not just from the milk, but from the kindness in the way Daniel had answered her questions without mocking her confusion. As the onlookers finally drifted away, whispering to each other, Lena felt certain that there was still more to learn about this mysterious subject. Because if humans could attach so much feeling to something as simple as milk, then perhaps the true meaning of nectar was deeper still, and she decided that she would continue her research until she could uncover every layer of this fascinating human secret. The next day, Lena returned to the research station's nutrition lab, determined to dig deeper into the mystery of human nectar, and Daniel greeted her with the same warm smile as before, though she noticed a hint of mischief in his eyes, as if he already knew something she did not. She carried her data pad ready to capture every detail, and she told him she wished to witness the preparation of nectar from its earliest stage to the moment it reached the human table. Daniel agreed and led her through the storage hall into a larger room filled with strange machines that hummed softly. As they walked, Lena explained that in her culture, beverages with strong cultural meaning were often tied to important ceremonies like the naming of a youngling or the uniting of two clans, and she asked if human nectar had similar rituals. Daniel chuckled and said that while milk was not exactly a ceremonial drink, it was present in many important human memories, like breakfasts with family or celebrations where sweet desserts were shared. He told her how children often drank milk before bed, and how many people still enjoyed it even as adults because it reminded them of home and comfort. Lena listened carefully, writing notes and nodding slowly because she could see how this connected to her earlier thoughts about emotional bonding through food and drink. Daniel then walked over to a large cold unit and brought out not only a container of plain milk, but also bottles with colorful labels. One said strawberry, another said chocolate, and Lena's eyes widened as she realized there were variations of nectar. Perhaps each flavor carried its own meaning or was reserved for certain events. She asked if the different colors indicated rank or status among humans, and Daniel laughed gently, shaking his head before explaining that the flavors were simply a matter of personal preference. Still, Lena was fascinated by the idea that humans could transform the same base drink into so many different forms, just for pleasure. He poured the chocolate milk into a glass and handed it to her, and this time she felt the liquid was richer and sweeter, with a taste that wrapped around her senses like a warm cloak. She closed her eyes for a moment to focus fully on the experience, and when she opened them, she told Daniel, "This must surely be the highest form of human nectar, reserved for moments of great joy." Daniel grinned and told her that in a way she was right, because many humans treated such flavors as special treats. It was then that a technician passing through overheard the conversation and could not resist asking Lena what she thought nectar actually was, and Lena explained with complete seriousness that it was a unique substance made and kept by human males that could bring comfort and even strength to those who consumed it. The technician blinked, then burst into laughter, shaking their head and waving to Daniel, who sighed and finally decided it was time for a full clarification. He told her gently that there had been a misunderstanding from the start. The term nectar was not a special code for some hidden male-only drink. It was just a playful or poetic word humans sometimes use for sweet liquids, and milk was something enjoyed by all genders, not produced by men in any unique way. Lena froze for a moment, her antenna lowering in embarrassment as she replayed all the assumptions she had made since hearing the word nectar. She realized now that the mysterious air surrounding it had been entirely in her imagination, perhaps fueled by the way human conversations tended to mix humor and seriousness in ways that were hard for her to read. She felt her face heat in the Orlani way, a faint silver flush spreading across her skin, yet instead of laughing at her, Daniel only smiled kindly and said misunderstandings were part of learning, and that she had not been wrong to think milk was important, because for humans, it truly was in its own way. Determined not to let the embarrassment stop her, Lena asked to taste the plain milk again, and this time she paid attention not just to the flavor, but to the feeling it brought. She noticed how it made her think of safety, and how Daniel's eyes softened as he watched her, and she understood that sharing this drink was less about the substance itself, and more about the act of offering something familiar and comforting. She realized this was perhaps one of the most human things she had seen so far, the way they used food and drink to connect and communicate without words around them. A few crew members were still grinning and whispering, but Lena found she did not mind anymore because she had discovered something valuable, and she even began to laugh at herself in the soft Orlani way, which sounded like a gentle chime. She told Daniel that perhaps she had come seeking one kind of nectar, but had found another entirely, the kind that flowed not from a body or a machine, but from kindness and trust between people. He nodded and raised his own glass in a small toast, and for the first time, she imitated the gesture and felt it was right. As she finished her drink, she updated her data pad, not only with the biological details of milk, but also with her new understanding that the same substance could carry different meanings to different beings, and that in human life, much of what mattered could not be measured in chemical formulas alone. She concluded her notes by writing that nectar was in truth any shared comfort that made two minds feel closer. When they left the lab together, the day felt brighter and the sounds of the station friendlier, and Lena knew that though her first belief had been mistaken, it had led her to something far more interesting: the start of a friendship, and the realization that humans might be full of simple secrets that took time to understand. The following day, Lena decided it was time to return the kindness she had received from Daniel and the human crew by sharing something from her own people. She carried with her a slim crystal flask wrapped in soft woven leaves, and inside it was a liquid known among the Orlani as Lumora juice, made from the glowing blue fruits of the high ridge trees that grew only on her homeworld. It was a drink reserved for long journeys and late nights of storytelling when the air was cool and the fires burned low, and she thought it would be the perfect gift to offer in return for the nectar experience. She found Daniel in the central lounge of the station, sitting with two other crew members, and as soon as they saw her, their faces lit up, not only because she had brought something new, but also because the memory of her first milk tasting had already become a source of gentle amusement that seemed to pass from one human to another. Daniel greeted her warmly, and she placed the flask on the table, explaining that this drink was one of the treasures of her world, and that it was meant to be sipped slowly while sharing good company. The liquid shimmered faintly in the light, casting tiny blue reflections onto the table surface, and Daniel leaned forward with interest, asking if it had any special effects. She told him that it was sour and sharp, yet refreshing, and that it filled the body With a light energy that could last for many hours, she poured the drink into small clear cups and passed them around. Watching with anticipation, as the humans took their first cautious sips, their eyes widened, and Daniel gave a soft cough followed by a grin, saying it was unlike anything he had ever tasted. Other crew members laughed and began to compare the sensation to various human foods, none of which seemed quite right to Lena. But she enjoyed their attempts and felt a quiet pride that she had been able to surprise them. Just as they had surprised her, the conversation turned to food traditions in different cultures, and Lena found herself explaining how Orlani families would gather after the harvest to press the lumora fruit and store the juice for winter months, and how the act of sharing it was considered a gesture of trust and friendship. Daniel listened closely and nodded as if recognizing the same heart behind the human habit of sharing milk or tea or coffee. As the talk continued, a technician entered the lounge carrying a small handheld screen and showed it to Daniel with a grin, and to Lena's surprise, it was a short clip taken from the security feed of the nutrition lab showing her first reaction to tasting milk. The video had been edited with playful subtitles, declaring best male nectar in the galaxy in bright letters and a few light-hearted sound effects. Lena's antenna twitched in surprise, but then she began to laugh, the clear chime sound drawing more attention from nearby tables. Soon it seemed almost everyone in the lounge had seen the clip, and the phrase male nectar was being repeated in good humor by crew members passing by. Daniel looked slightly embarrassed, but also amused, telling her that once something became a running joke among humans, it could spread very quickly. She admitted that she did not mind because the phrase would now remind her of the lesson she had learned and of the kindness shown to her. He replied that in a way she had given them a gift too, because now every time they drank milk, they would think of her first astonished expression. They decided to make the cultural exchange official by organizing a small evening gathering where both human and Orlani foods would be served. Lena prepared more lumora juice, along with thin spiral pastries from her ship stores, while the humans brought milk in all its varieties, plain strawberry chocolate, and even a frozen form they called ice cream. The room filled with curious visitors from both species, each eager to taste and compare, and soon laughter and conversation blended with the clinking of glasses and the hum of translation devices. Lena found herself speaking not just to Daniel but to many others, answering questions about Orlani life and asking about human customs. In return, she learned about holidays where people gathered to share special meals, and about family recipes passed down for generations, and she shared stories about the great sky festivals of her world where glowing fruit lights were strung across the hills and music echoed into the night. The more they spoke, the more she realized that although their foods and drinks were different, the feelings behind them were the same: a desire to connect, to remember, and to celebrate. As the evening drew on, Daniel poured her a small glass of chocolate milk and raised his own glass of lumora juice in a quiet toast to shared discoveries. She touched her glass to his and they both drank, and in that moment, she felt a bridge forming, not of metal or technology, but of simple understanding and warmth. And she thought that perhaps this was what exploration was truly about, not just charting the stars, but finding the common ground between very different hearts. The phrase male nectar was still whispered, now and then that night, always with a smile, and sometimes with a raised glass, but to Lena, it no longer sounded like a mistake. Instead, it felt like a badge of belonging, a small piece of shared language that had grown from a moment of misunderstanding into a memory she would carry with her when she left this world. The day of Lena's departure from Earth came sooner than she expected, and the station seemed unusually quiet that morning, as if the humans and Orlani crew were each busy with their own thoughts. She had packed her samples carefully, the flask of lumora juice, now half empty from the gathering, placed beside her notebooks and digital logs, every page filled with observations, not just about human biology, but about their habits, their laughter, their way of turning even a misunderstanding into a shared memory. She walked the long corridor to the docking bay, her steps soft on the metal floor, and her mind replaying the many moments she had shared with Daniel and the others. When she reached the bay, she found Daniel already waiting beside the small cargo shuttle that would carry her back to her ship. He held something behind his back and greeted her with the same open smile she had seen on the first day, but now there was a weight to it, as if he knew they would not speak again for a long time. They exchanged a few words about the journey ahead and how she planned to present her findings to the Irlani Science Council. She told him she would recommend that more cultural exchanges be arranged with humans, because there was so much to learn beyond charts and measurements. Daniel finally brought his hand forward and revealed a small package wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with string. She tilted her head in curiosity and took it from him, peeling the paper away to reveal a smooth glass bottle filled with a dark, sweet-smelling liquid. The label read chocolate milk in bold letters. She looked at him with wide eyes, and he explained that it was for her to take on her journey, so she could have a taste of home, well, his home, whenever she wanted. She felt a warmth in her chest that no translator could name. She thanked him in the Irlani way, pressing her palm to her forehead, and then to his a gesture that meant, "May our paths cross again," and she promised to share the drink with her closest friends on her ship, explaining the story behind it so that they too could understand the kindness of humans. Daniel laughed softly and said that if she did that, she might start a new trend among the Irlani, maybe even making chocolate milk a galactic delicacy. The thought made her antenna twitch with amusement. As they walked together toward the shuttle, a few crew members appeared from around the corner, each carrying something small for her to take along. One gave her a box of tea bags, another offered a pouch of ground coffee, both explaining that these were human drinks with their own comfort value, and one younger crew member handed her a printed card with the words "Best Male Nectar in the Galaxy" written in big bright letters, along with a still image from the now famous video of her first milk tasting. Lena laughed at the sight, her chime-like voice echoing in the bay, and she said she would keep it in her quarters as a reminder of the strange and wonderful time she had spent here. The boarding call sounded, and she knew it was time. She stepped into the shuttle, pausing at the doorway to look back one last time. Daniel raised his hand in farewell, and she mirrored the gesture, feeling a mix of excitement for the journey ahead and a quiet ache at leaving behind these new friends. The door closed with a soft hiss, and the shuttle lifted gently from the floor, turning toward the open expanse of the docking tunnel. As the shuttle moved away, she took the seat by the window and watched the planet grow smaller in the distance. She opened the package once more and took out the bottle, twisting off the cap. She raised it to her lips and let the rich, sweet liquid flow over her tongue. The taste was exactly as she remembered, smooth and comforting, like the steady beat of a familiar song. She leaned back in her seat, closed her eyes for a moment, and thought about how something so simple could carry so much meaning. She opened her eyes again and made one final note in her log, speaking softly into the recorder. Humans thrive on complex bonds and shared experiences. Their foods and drinks are not merely sustenance, but anchors of memory and emotion. Recommend further study on the role of comfort substances in human culture and on the unexpected bridges they can build between species. She added a final personal line: "This mission has shown me that sometimes the greatest discoveries are not found in charts or specimens, but in the moments we laugh together over a shared glass of something warm and sweet." The shuttle engines hummed as they entered the black sea of space, and Lena took another sip, smiling to herself in the quiet cabin. She whispered, "Best male nectar in the galaxy," and the words felt less like a joke now, and more like a secret she was taking with her across the stars. A secret about humans, about kindness, and about how even the smallest taste could connect two very different worlds. The end.